My name is Norm Volsky, your host, and this is the Digital Health Heavyweights podcast.
Thanks, Norm. It's an honor to be here, and it's been fun to work with you over the years.
Hello, and welcome back to the Digital Health Heavyweights podcast with your host, Norm Volsky. And today we are very excited to be joined by Vinay Nagaraj, co-founder and CEO of Bonfire Analytics. Vinay, welcome to the pod.
Hey Norm, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all of our viewers and listeners that don't know Vinay, super well, Bonfire Analytics is a venture-backed startup helping health tech companies sell smarter with AI-driven lead scoring and claims-based targeting. Vinay previously led growth at Roundtrip, scaling revenue 30x and landing their first Fortune 500 client and an NIH partnership. He holds engineering and biomedical degrees from Duke, mentors with Alchemist Accelerator, and is a member of the Forbes Business Council. So Vinay, really excited to talk about you, your career, and all things Bonfire.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Norm.
Absolutely. So with a biomedical engineering background, what inspired you to get, into the healthcare field?
Yeah, I think it started honestly before I even chose biomedical engineering. I was always fascinated by the intersection of healthcare and technology. So really looking at, how can people get care in a way that's faster, better, cheaper, and that was kind of very interesting to me. I always like solving problems, and this was a way to solve problems that can actually help people. So I think that was kind of my foundational fascination and also kind of starting point. So yeah, and in studying biomedical engineering, I think some of my favorite classes were where we actually got to go into, let's say, the hospital or the clinic and understand what problems physicians are having, and then actually build a product and then test it out and see if it's actually helpful or not. So yeah, there was some entrepreneurial spirit even, I think, in certain classes that I really enjoyed. So yeah.
There are a long list of issues for every stakeholder in the healthcare ecosystem, so no shortage of things to fix. Walk us through your experience at Roundtrip.
Yeah, so I joined Roundtrip after I did the Venture for America Fellowship, which you may or may not be familiar with. It was started by Andrew Yang, who ran for president, and he started this fellowship with the goal of essentially getting more entrepreneurs, especially in cities that needed more jobs and economic revitalization. So I joined Roundtrip as an early growth hire in Philadelphia through Venture for America, and it was exciting. I definitely got to see a truly mission-driven organization. The mission of the company was really to get people to care through transportation, and transportation is such a huge barrier to care, and so it was one that was easy for me to get behind. And in terms of my journey there, I had formerly been an engineer, and then getting into the sales world, it's not necessarily the easiest shift, but I was certainly eager to learn and found that healthcare sales is actually incredibly challenging. I think a lot of companies have a lot of frustration, in terms of, one, the long sales cycles, two, understanding the market. And there were so many things that I kind of learned through my time, but I was fortunately able to do reasonably well during my time there. But it was definitely part of my frustration that ultimately inspired me to join forces with my co-founder to start Bonfire.
How did your technical acumen help you become a better salesperson?
Yeah, that's a really interesting and good question. It turns out my boss at Roundtrip was also an engineer who also went into sales. So we had definitely clicked and connected on a lot of different levels. One is, I think there is a lot of process-driven parts of sales that may not be fully appreciated. I think when people think sales, the immediate image is like someone going door to door, trying to schmooze people to get them to buy something. But I think now in, a very complex selling environment, it really requires a lot of process, a lot of thinking analytically, and being able to, kind of understand what are all the moving parts. And so I think my engineering background, and along with my manager at the time, we both felt like if we really broke this down step by step in a way that's very formulaic, that it would lead to success. And I think for me, certainly it did that. There's an art to sales as well, but the science of sales is actually it did bring a lot of the engineering mindset out of me too. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like recruiting is sales as well. Anything that's persuasion, I would argue, is sales. And ultimately, process is table stakes. Like if you don't have a strong process, you're not going to consistently have success. You can be as persuasive and have the best product, but if you don't really have a strong sales process and, just really good fundamentals, you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. So, I think
Yeah.
I would take someone with great process and decent communication skills over a great talker that can't stay organized and can't stay focused, on the task 100% of the time. So really, really interesting that, you really benefited from that experience. What did growing revenue 30x and landing the first Fortune 500 client and two strategic partnerships with NIH and American Cancer Society. What did that teach you about sales? Like you obviously had success the first time you tried it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's easy to look back and highlight the ups, but certainly there's a learning curve for me. It wasn't all just wins. I think every person who's been in sales knows that you have to live in the world of rejection. So while I was fortunate to be able to be part of bringing on some big names, I also had my fair share of deals that I thought I should have closed that didn't, right? So that's the nature of the game. But yeah, I think a few things that I definitely can think back to. I think one is like building authentic relationships. I think someone once said, business moves at the speed of trust, and I think that is very true in sales. Like being sincere, being open, and not necessarily like there is a smoke and mirrors element, but not doing that to the point of where you're almost concealing certain parts of, let's say, your product or the company that they find out later about. I think being honest and being authentic is really important. And I think the relationships, like I think every good salesperson will tell you, like you're only as good as your champion, right? So they're the ones who are selling on your behalf. And being able to have a good relationship with the champion requires a huge level of authenticity and connecting with people as people. And so I think that's one of the things I would think about. I think the other thing is also understanding how to do discovery well. I think that's a key piece that a lot of people may not know about, is the idea of like being a painkiller versus a vitamin. Like people buy the painkiller way more of the time than being a vitamin, right?
Yeah.
And in order to be a painkiller, you got to uncover the pain. And I think being able to do that well, being able to do that systematically, I think that's something I initially was not very good at, but I think I've been able to get better over time. So.
And now that you've had some experience doing it, and obviously when you're a founder, like you're in sales mode. Like when you are the founder, you are the salesperson, a lot of the time. What are three crucial traits you look for when hiring salespeople and for sales roles, considering like you've sat in their seat before?
Yeah. I think it's hard to distill it down to three, but I think I have a few in mind. One is, I think, hunger, and a hunger to learn specifically. I think really good folks, not just in sales, but generally, are always trying to learn more, upskill themselves, develop personally, professionally. I think, and you can see that in a person, like the extent to which they're putting in the extra mile, or they're learning outside of work and being able to implement new things and try new things. I think that's one piece of it. I think the other is taking initiative. Especially, I appreciate this, especially coming from startup. I think startups have you're building the plane as you're flying it, so the structure may not be there. And so I think really good folks who are good at sales are also the ones, especially in kind of a startup environment, who are able to take initiative and even put process in place when there might not be one, and not just expecting it to be given to them, right? I think that's another thing. And then the third, I would say, is being strong communicators. So even if we're unsure about something, being able to say that in a clear way and understand, like for a prospect, as an example, like why this is something that is a gap. That requires a level of communication that's really direct, clear, and easy to understand. And I think that's another thing you look for, is people who don't beat around the bush, who are able to get to the point and articulate it well.
Couldn't agree more. I love that. And yeah, I think radical transparency is super important. People know you have an agenda. People know your goal is to sell them something. So like, acknowledging that, acknowledging like what your interests are, understanding what their interests are, trying to marry those two, and obviously, like I guess not so obvious, a lot of people don't do this well. But obviously accentuating your strengths and like telling people why like your product or your service is an amazing thing. but also like being transparent in here are the drawbacks. Like I tell people in my business, I'm like, hey, good news. My team's the best in the country at this thing.
Yeah.
Problem is, like, we're not the cheapest option. Like,
Yeah.
can't be the best and the cheapest at the same time. It's counterintuitive. So, like, let's talk about the advantages, what the disadvantages are, and I need to understand what you're optimizing for. Like, are you trying to do this as cost effectively as possible? Are you trying to get the highest ROI? Like, what exactly is the goal here? Is it to get the top talent? Is it to get someone at like bargain basement pricing, like on their own comp, like all that type of stuff without understanding like what the company and customers trying to optimize for? You're just grasping at straws, and it's very obvious like you're looking out for your best interest, but you don't even care what theirs is because if you don't ask, that's how it comes across. And I think that's what a lot of salespeople really struggle with is not really digging deep and understanding their customers, understanding what they're looking for. So,
Absolutely.
what inspired you to build Bonfire Analytics?
Yeah, it's actually kind of a cool story. So I was still at Roundtrip at the time, and this was around when COVID was at its height in 2021. And so Jaya, who's my co-founder, he and I have been good friends since college. So we had different paths. He went into data science, and I went into health tech growth and that sort of thing. But we reconnected and realized we had a shared vision, a shared interest in healthcare and data. From my perspective, it was more selfishly like, how can I use data to be better in my role, being on the sales side. And then for Jay, he had a lot of experience working at Silicon Valley startups, at SoFi, connecting various disparate data sets that don't talk to each other. And I think there was strong interest from his side in healthcare just because there are data sets available, but not used in a way that's truly actionable. And I think he really went to sort of a similar conclusion like that I did, where there's a kind of open space for what we can do with healthcare and data. So it was definitely a joint kind of vision that we had for this. So the story is, as we kind of developed, kind of initial concept, it was something where I wanted to bring it back to see if it can be valuable at Roundtrip. And Roundtrip actually ended up being one of our early customers. Yeah, so one of my former employer becoming an early adopter, that was a very much a little bit of an aha moment where it's like, oh, okay, there's a customer that actually is willing to use this, potentially pay for it. So as we kind of built it out, we realized, there's a business model behind this, and that's kind of how we ended up leaving our jobs, getting into the Alchemist Accelerator, which is a great program for companies that are B2B focused like us and also have a healthcare domain focus. So we ended up doing that program, which is San Francisco based, had some remote components, but the start of 2023. But that was kind of the co-founder journey between the two of us.
I like it. Walk us through a little bit on what Bonfire Analytics does for its customers and why the customers, benefit from using it.
Sure.
And then talk to us about some of your most proud success stories so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So we like to say our mission is really to accelerate the adoption of healthcare technology. So that can include digital tools, devices, therapeutics into the healthcare ecosystem, which includes providers, payers, patients. And so the problem that we're really solving for is, like I mentioned, even in my own journey, I found commercializing in healthcare is incredibly challenging. Yeah. And a lot of these commercial teams, whether you're digital health device, biotech, life sciences, getting the right data, but more importantly, the right insights can be tough, if not impossible in a lot of cases. Yeah. And that leads to a lot of sales teams doing what I call spray and pray, right? Mm-hmm. You end up casting a really wide net. You don't really have a sense of what's the ideal customer look like. And it's a lot of wasted time, going down the wrong alley, where being targeted from the beginning can be a lot more efficient. So that's kind of the problem that we're solving for. And yeah, it's been exciting. We started off in 2023, gotten quite a few customers, and we have a few kind of success and stories, case studies to share. So one of them, actually I'll highlight a couple of them. One of them is a company called Point Designs. They're a prosthetics company based out of Colorado. So they essentially provide finger, wrist, hand, arm prostheses to hand surgeons, orthotists, to help patients, who have had some sort of amputation or that sort of condition. And when we engaged with them, they were previously kind of Google searching, trying to find these doctors, trying to understand which markets do they enter. They're trying to understand where should they hire even their own commercial team, their sales reps. Mm-hmm. And so with Bonfire, they've been able to be super targeted with this. They understand, one, where are all the amputations happening, and we get that through, we have a holistic data set of claims and prescription. They will understand where the market is. They were able to then map out the territories, which markets they should be focusing on. They were able to hire the reps in the right areas that led to an equitable distribution across the board. And finally, their sales efficiency went up by 3x, which is really exciting because now they're not having to overspend on sales and marketing resources to get to the same kind of revenue goal. So that's kind of one case study that we've highlighted. The other is a company called Claricare. They're in the wound management space. And so when we started engaging with them, they had actually worked with a previous data vendor that was really like a data reseller. And how we differentiated is we're not necessarily reselling the data, because sales teams, their job is to really focus on what they do best, which is selling, and not to be data scientists or analysts. So navigating data dumps can be really time consuming, and sometimes the incentives aren't aligned. So we provided some insights into, hey, these are the markets you should go after. These are the lead lists that you can equip your new hires with. And they told us the new hires that they brought on were able to ramp instantaneously with our data, because now from day one, they have a sense of who to go after. And actually, we're also happy to say they saw over $250,000 of new revenue working with us. And so even though the two companies have very different patient populations, products, services, the kind of underlying pain point was very similar. It's like we didn't have the right insights to make a lot of these commercial decisions. And now they were able to see the impact, not only the top of pipeline, but even, in actual closed revenue. So, yeah.
You've got to be the best friend of CFOs, nationally, maybe even internationally, because they've been told by sales leaders and salespeople for decades, hey, we need a budget to go out and take our clients golfing and to fancy restaurants and to, very expensive drink, nights out on the town. And it's like, no, you just need good data. Like, it's not about like whining and dining these prospects. It's about like actually providing value. So I think CFOs around the country are probably going to be singing your praises. So tell me a little bit about your personal story. You were born in India, moved around a bit, Singapore, Indonesia, China, and then the United States. Talk to me about your living in multiple countries, how that, potentially helped you as an executive, and, how's it affected your mindset when it comes to building a business?
Yeah, for sure. So maybe to explain why I moved around so much. So I was born in India. My parents were living in India at the time. My dad ultimately ended up working for a multinational automobile company. And so he got projects in different places. I'm an only child. So as he kind of moved, my mom and I moved with him. And so this happened a lot through my childhood. So like you said, I moved every few years around Southeast Asia, was in Chicago during middle school, came back to China for high school. So it was a lot of moving, a lot of, sort of having to reinvent myself and also understand new language, new culture. I'll be honest, I didn't love it growing up, because I think as a kid, you want stability, you want the same friends. And I had to, kind of do that over and over again, make new friends and have a new community. But I think now as an adult, I do look back and I'm grateful for that kind of exposure, because I think a lot of people, now have the travel bug, right? They want to go around. Yeah. I think when I was younger, I got the chance to see it early, and it was exciting to really be like, wow, like it's really interesting to understand how people live, what motivates them, and also give me a sense of empathy of like, people come from different walks of life, but ultimately there's a lot more in common than we have than different. I haven't done a ton of like introspections, like, oh, what has actually helped me in starting a company, but I would say probably like adaptability and resilience. Being adaptable is something I just was forced to do. And so I can certainly thank my parents for that. And then, resilience too. It's like a lot of times, even when you have tough challenges growing up, it builds a sense of like, okay, just persevere, just, continue going. And I think that's also probably helped with Bonfire, because I think, it's just generally across the board, founders who do well, they just know how to push through brick walls. And so I'm constantly learning from other folks like that too. So
I've been asked many a time, hey, like, what do you think is the most important characteristics of someone to be successful in a startup environment? And the first two things that come to mind are ability to deal in ambiguity and resilience. If you have those two things, like those are the two most important things. You need to be, successful in a startup. because there's plenty of both, in a startup environment. So, again, heroes are not made in easy times. A lot of
Yeah.
people, have to go through tough times to like build up that strength and resilience. And, I think that could be something you look back on and realize, like, hey, like some of those times where I wish I wasn't taken out of my comfort zone and put into uncomfortable situations, it allowed you to grow. It allowed you to,
Yeah.
mature and, really become who you are. And I would say, I didn't move around that much. I lived in like the same location for most of my
Yeah.
life. But when I was 8, my mom won a Fulbright Award and taught at the University of Tel Aviv in Israel for 6 months.
Oh,
I
wow.
was 8 years old at the time. I had a sister who was 11 and a sister who was 13. So they went to the school and their peers had already taken English classes. So at the very least, they could somewhat communicate with some of their peers. But guess what? English classes, I don't think start till third grade in Israel. So like most of the people who I went to school with like didn't speak my language. So it
Mhm.
was like very difficult to communicate. Luckily, there were a couple English speakers that were in Hebrew as a second language,
Right.
like little classroom that I would go to a couple times a day, but like math class and science were in Hebrew. So, anyways, I think that helped me quite a bit. I did not enjoy it at the time. I used to call my dad all the time, who was a lawyer, and he couldn't just like take 6 months off. So he
Yeah.
visited a couple times, but I'd call him and I'd be like, "Oh, I miss you, and I want to go home with you," when he'd come visit us. But I do think like it's helped me because if you get put in difficult or uncomfortable situations, like kids or even adults are adaptable, and with challenges comes strength and comes getting comfortable being uncomfortable, which I think is a key to success. So interesting how like you saw similar things in your own experience. What is clients' reaction to some of the data that you're able to share with them, and how has it affected their commercial strategy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think honestly, just echoing or piggyback on what I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of our customers are starving for better data, better
Yeah.
insights, and also like tools that are integrated right within their workflow. I think the reaction has been largely positive in the sense that the data helps answer some pretty critical business questions. Like
Yeah.
there's a reason why we're going after kind of health tech companies is because they really, really are looking to be efficient. And also, a lot of them are kind of maturing in how they sell, where they want to be able to be more predictable with their sales and their revenue operations. So, having better data and insights can really help unlock a lot of those things. And I think that's where we've heard good feedback on like this data has helped us size our market. This data has helped these data and insights have helped us prioritize target accounts. It's helped us gain footholds in key markets. It's helped us hire more effectively, and it's helped us understand patient referral patterns. That's
Yeah.
something we've been focusing on a lot over the last 2 quarters. Is what happens when patients go from PCPs to specialists, and what does that patient journey look like? That's part of our value prop, and so all of that has just generally been, I think, good validation for us. And it's something where we listen to our customers a lot in terms of what do they want. But it comes back to, are they able to answer these business questions with what we're providing? And, for the most part, we've heard, I think, good feedback. Obviously, nothing's a finished work yet. So we're, continually evolving our product. But I would say that's kind of what we've been hearing.
What do you think are the biggest mistakes healthcare companies do when selling to either hospitals, health plans, or employers?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think one I see is a lot of companies end up uh, almost relying on the whales to come through, right? So if you're a digital health company selling to health systems, like yes, there's over 600 health systems, but the likelihood of that health system to come through in a relatively short timeline, having gone through that myself, having sold to health systems, it's just there's a lot that needs to go right, and a lot of it's out of even your control, right? Like the timing may not align, the IT resources may not be there to implement something. There's that saying for every one stakeholder that says yes, there's 200 who can say no. I think that's where one of the mistakes I see is companies focusing on let's just go after the health systems and the whale accounts. I think that's where you need to have a more of a stratified funnel where you're going after, the FQHCs, the clinics, the hospitals, the physician groups. Having some diversified approach there can be helpful and getting quicker wins and not just relying on the big ones to come through. And I think the part of the pain point that we're solving for is that whole spray and pray model. It's like throwing people at the problem where it's like, I'm going to hire 5 SDRs and then have them kind of cold email 1,000 different physician leaders or healthcare administrators every week, and then expecting responses to go up linearly based on the number of people I have, the number of emails I send. That's just not going to work, especially in 2025 when you have AI tools that are spamming inboxes. And I think healthcare, just generally, as I'm sure you might have also seen in your experience, Norm, is like email is a very hard channel just generally because these people are busy, they're helping patients. So just doing more volume without any kind of strategic plan isn't likely to go that well. So I would say those are probably the few things that I've seen and even I've done myself. So yeah.
As a healthcare investor, I'm going to selfishly ask, based on all the data you've seen, where do you see a lot of the opportunity in the market? Where do you think there's going to be like new categories built, or where a lot of opportunity lies?
That's a good question. I can share just a few off the top of my head. I think in the market, what we're seeing is there's a ton of growth in the behavioral health space. We do have customers in that space, and a lot of them are very well funded. And I think that just goes to show, there is still an ongoing kind of mental health crisis, right? Being able to support people in different avenues is really important, whether that's virtual, therapy, intensive outpatient care, whatever that may be. There's a lot of behavioral health, I think, need in the market. The others that I'll highlight are, things that are more topical in the headlines, like GLP-1s. Like we actually wrote a piece about GLP-1s where it can be helpful for, weight management, but people are prescribing them for things like insomnia and other interrelated conditions where, it's not as intuitive as to why that's happening, but we're just
show that that's appropriate clinically, or is it
that's the thing. I think it's what we've seen is there are kind of comorbidities, right? So someone might have diabetes, but they might also have these other conditions, and so we're seeing prescriptions written out for patients who have many of these conditions. And so the initial kind of gut reaction is it being overused? And perhaps the answer is yes, but it also goes to show there are a lot of interrelated conditions out there that need like not just a prescription drug, but also kind of like a holistic care regimen for patients to truly get to a better outcome. I think those are a few things that I've seen, but there are certainly other trends out there too.
So having access to a tremendous amount of data, incredibly helpful, but unless you know what to do with it, it doesn't become actionable. So how does Bonfire not only give the data to customers, but also help them make sense of it and leverage it appropriately and optimally?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do is we work with a lot of sort of specialty specific organizations. And so the first thing we try to do with our customers is we define the patient population. So we have, let's say 300 million lives worth of claims, but not all of those claims are going to be equally relevant for every customer, right? So understanding the slice of data that people want to really focus on is important. So we define that with them, and how we define that in our platform is, by diagnosis code, by CPT code, HCPCS code, revenue code, DRG code, NDC code. Like we're able to get very, very specific, if someone had an ED visit, if there's a specific patient age range. So we're able to use a lot of that to kind of generate and almost showcase the right data for a given company. So as an example, we work with a company called Nourish, who has been well funded. They target dietitians, and so they're interested in what are the conditions related to, let's say, obesity or diabetes, right? So being able to show them the data specifically for those patient populations is important. So we start there, and then from there we're able to give them insights on what does the market look like, who are the provider organizations who are serving those patients, where are they located, can we deep dive into those providers, so those physicians, groups, clinics, hospital health systems, can we get into that? What do the affiliations look like, right? And as you know, affiliations is very messy, where one physician may have their own private practice, they might be working at another group, they might be moonlighting at a clinic or a hospital. So we capture a lot of that within our data. So it gives them the opportunity to understand the market from a kind of bird's eye view, but then go drill all the way down. And so this is part of the helping them market size, target, effectively, and then ultimately tell the right story when they're even on the phone with some of these folks or in a meeting. So like that's how we kind of approach it. And so we do have a web-based platform where someone who's a sales rep or sales leader can log in and they're able to get those foundational and very curated insights directly. And they're able to not only use it to answer these questions and then prospect, convert, and all that fun stuff. They can also plug it into their CRM. So we do integrate with HubSpot, Salesforce. So it's now living in their system of record. And so we try to make it very easy for them to use these insights. So hopefully that was helpful.
Do you ever help these companies with their sales pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the customers that come to us, they have a good sense of what's working, and now they're ready to go from like 1 to 10. I would say we don't focus as much on the 0 to 1s, right?
Yep.
But yeah, once they have a sense of what's working, we can certainly help them with the data tell the right story. And that's something that we've also been working on more is like, hey, how can the data help you justify ROI, right? So certainly that's part of what we do too.
Fantastic. Walk us through, if you don't mind, what advice would you give founders looking for funding right now? Like, I want to congratulate you. You just closed a round. Not the easiest time to raise. So walk me through like where you saw success and what advice you would give for founders currently thinking about or looking to raise funds.
Yeah, for sure. So we, for background, we closed our round end of 2023, and it's been. I think the market has not fully recovered even since then.
Yeah.
And I think, couldn't have picked a worse time. I think the SVB collapse that happened at that point. Just generally the macroeconomic climate. There's a lot of dry powder, but not a lot of checks being written. So I certainly learned a lot, and that was our first time fundraising. But and a lot. I have to give credit to a lot of founders who also helped me. So I try to pay it forward whenever I can. If there's other founders who are listening or otherwise who want to hear about our experience and if we can be helpful, I'm more than happy to connect. But I think the main kind of theme is being very, very strategic. And some examples of that is one, going out to raise with VCs directly, it can be really tough because it requires a tremendous amount of differentiation. There's so many AI companies that are out there that are trying to raise on just a pitch deck. So in order to kind of build some initial momentum, I would even suggest going after angels first and starting off with personal network, friends, family, and then getting warm introductions from whoever's in those personal networks to people who can write smaller checks. And I was surprised that when you don't have anything raised, going to a VC and saying, "Hey, look, I have 300,000 raised already, and I'm looking to fill up my, let's say, $1 million pre-seed round." It gives them a sense of like, look, this company's already raising money, they're getting capital. Yeah. I need to act quickly. If not, I'll miss out on this opportunity. I think that's important. And I think that's something that's almost neglected. It's like, I'm going to go raise direct to VC. I think angels can be a great stepping stone.
Yeah. Or family offices.
Family offices, exactly. And the other thing is, even with VCs, this was actually something that surprised me. There's thousands of VCs out there. So being very targeted about, which are funds that are stage specific for you and also a thesis fit for you. And that requires some research and going after those folks versus, like XYZ.
Pray
and pray. Exactly.
Like some healthcare companies. So
yeah, exactly. And honestly, even the VCs that are a high value fit for you, going to the founders of their portfolio companies and trying to get warm introductions, that's a great strategy because founders often try to help out other founders, as I found. And obviously this is a great way to vet the VC too. It's like, have you had a good experience with them, right? So getting those done in a strategic way can be really, really helpful. And the last thing I would say is like, on the topic of resilience, I think just generally everyone's going to see a ton of no's before they get their first yes. Obviously, if you get your first yes before, like, kudos, but I think generally it takes a little bit of like a warm-up period where the pitch and the what's resonating need to get refined. And that's what I've found as well when we were raising is, you just have to kind of push on, and then before you know it, the first yes will happen.
Some of the most successful companies I've ever worked with did not have the easiest time raising early stage money. Like, it's not always correlated.
Yeah.
So I think, never get discouraged if someone's not giving you the time of day yet. Doesn't mean much, even if they come with a really, really good track record of past success.
Yeah.
Really smart folks can still miss something like right under their nose. What are your favorite ways to exercise and reduce stress? I think it's really important, especially when you're CEO, founder of an early stage company, especially in the healthcare world, to like kind of practice what we preach.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm a basketball junkie, self-admittedly. So I've been watching the NBA for several years. I played intramural basketball in college, so that's been kind of my sanctuary. So going up to finding a court near me and getting shots up is a great way to de-stress. And yeah, that I think that's one of the ways. The other's actually even simpler, like taking long walks. I think can be good. You know,
Yeah.
especially with the nice weather we're having in New York. Trying to just go out and take 10-minute walk, clear your head can be really therapeutic as well.
Couldn't agree more. And then I think what we put into our bodies is like incredibly important to our overall health. Any healthy recipes that you make or your family makes that is a house favorite that you'd recommend and maybe could inspire someone to try something new, and maybe we'll actually cook it on the Healthy Headhunter podcast. Sounds good to the team.
Yeah, well, I can highlight two. I do really like eggs, so I try to make like a mushroom or veggie omelet.
Okay.
I think that can be both tasty and healthy, a lot of protein. And then what's up?
And it's quick.
And it's quick, exactly.
Yep.
And then there's, I'm sure viewers must have, or you yourself might have tried Indian food. So, there's a dish called like chana masala, which is, chickpeas and rice.
My wife's favorite dish, so I'm gonna have to make it. I'm glad you mentioned it. It will be
Yeah,
one of the next few we make.
there you go. So that's also packed with protein, healthy, good staple in our house too.
Yeah, on Healthy Headhunters, we did make dosas with a peanut chutney. That was pretty good, and
Nice.
one of the things I love. It's like one of my favorite foods. But anyways, yeah, chana masala is definitely a favorite as well, and we'll have to make it. And I think we'll have to make a yellow dal as well. So
Yeah, that's another protein one. That's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
plant-based protein. It's really, really good for you. So again, thank you so much, Vinay, for joining us on the Digital Health Heavyweights podcast. Really excited to continue to monitor, Bonfire's success. And the great thing about Bonfire's success is if you're successful, that means other health tech companies are being successful as a whole. So as Bonfire goes, should go the entire industry. So thank you for what you're doing and getting the data in the hands of companies that are proving, that their solutions are super valuable. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for the time, Norm. Great conversation, and yeah, excited to stay connected here.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, Vinay. Take care. Thank you for joining. Please like, comment, and subscribe below if you enjoyed it.